gold in my hands like it's no thing. Jacket same color as the smoke stains. Pray to God that I never grow old, but I also pray to God that I grow wings. Damn, can't lie, today was a good day. Fell fly, new cool kicks and a kick-ass ride. And I kick it with my dogs, we just trying to get by. Just a couple of punts, all trying to get by. Just a couple of teens, all trying to survive. Live to the max, cause you don't live it twice. Couple green thumbs, all high as a cut.
Welcome back to another episode of Life to the Max. I'm your host, the Quad Father, aka Maximilian Gross, and today we're going to dive into the running world. The people who are running around and take it very seriously, marathon runners, whether you're a sprinter, that's what we're going to do. And I got Phillip Latocha with me today. And Phillip, it's nice having you here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me come out.
Was my brother started talking to you? How did that happen?
Yeah, we're at the gym. We're just talking. I mean, we see each other like all the time. There's like a collection of people who show up kind of at the same time at the gym. So eventually you start talking to people, and we find out that you've got this thing, the podcast.
Yeah.
He was kind of like exploring some running, some weightlifting. So we kind of find our common grounds there.
Rex doesn't run though.
I've seen him run like once or twice before, or at least try to. So I figured there was something there,
And I came up in the conversation.
I guess that was what happened. He was like, hey, my brother was like a big runner, and he wants to like bring you on and talk to you. So we're here.
Yeah, here we are. Right. So man, so how long have you been running?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Yeah, long answer.
Long answer? So I think I knew I was okay at running probably as like a kid, maybe like since kindergarten, first grade. But like I never really made anything of it until about college time. So I didn't run in high school. I played soccer for like a long time. But then I played like in grade school. So I was like always the kid who, if you passed me the ball, I would kick the ball like really far and I'd just run with it, And then in high school, I kind of took a break from sports. I started doing more music. I played in a band, so running and like anything of a fitness level.
What instrument did you play?
What's that?
What instrument did you play?
I was a guitar player.
Me too.
Yeah.
So for me, running, I didn't like it. I've always wanted to be a runner when I was a kid, but I was like, fuck, I can't do this. Like in wrestling, I would run, sprint, and do all these things, but I was never good at it. But
so,
what were you about to say?
I was gonna ask, were you active as a kid at all?
Yeah, so we all go through that pudgy phase, I guess, when you're growing up. When I was a freshman, I joined the soccer team, and that was a lot of running. Obviously, I didn't think how bad it was gonna be, but it's like literally all you're doing is running. And then I enjoyed it, so I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna join wrestling."
Sure.
So I joined wrestling, and that's a lot of running, dude. I didn't think it was. It's a lot of sprinting, actually.
Yeah.
It's because that you need endurance for wrestling.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it seems like it's easy on paper, and then like you realize it is. It's the same thing with like I guess like MMA, same thing. Just like 3-round bouts of anything, even like UFC too. It's just that'll drain you, especially upper body cardio. Man, like it looks easy, but it's not.
Yeah. So what got you like more focused on running rather than bands and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I guess after high school, college kind of happens. Halfway into college, I guess you go through like, if I talked about like the self-actualization phase in your life, would you know what I'm kind of talking about?
No.
Okay, so that's like the moment where it like kind of hits you like, there's no like definitive moment. I think just reality snaps and you're just like, okay, what am I doing with my life? What's my future looking like? I'm doing this thing in college. Is this going to be like a viable future? Like it's just reality kind of hitting you and you're like, oh, okay, I'm like zero. Like I'm not invincible at anything. So how do we become this thing that I envisioned I was going to be 10 years ago, 10 years into the future?
So wait, So when you were in college, you had this like epiphany, like kind of, and
Yeah.
were you doing any sports at the time?
No, so in college I was doing. So I started my my undergrad in computer science, and just like I guess it's death by a thousand cuts, right? Like some relationships in life go bad. You start realizing that like this thing you're studying might not have a viable future. You know, AI coming in, like people will work for half price in the field, and like you know, as I predicted, like computer science is just basically. Unless you're like the top tier, best of the best, or in software engineering, it's really hard to find like a computer science-esque job. Okay, somebody might correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what's happening now. And what I was deciding now is like, okay, cool. This major I'm studying might not have a viable future. I feel like physically inept because, you know, I'm not weightlifting. I'm like 115, 120 pounds, and I'm like 22 years old. So like I'm scrawny, I'm short, you know. So at what point do we start like breaking out these things? And I had a friend who was with me in college, and he said, hey, let's just go start weightlifting at the gym at the college, right? I went to a DePaul University, so we were just working out at DePaul.
This is a good one.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time there. We were doing like the workout that Thor from the Avengers was doing. I guess he had like or Chris Helmsworth had his own like workout, so we followed that workout plan. And then after a while, like my friend went on vacation and he didn't come back to the gym, and I was on my own. So like that's your moment of like.
You did Chris Hemsworth's workout plan?
I did for a while, yeah. And I like distinctly remember he had a lot of like forearm workouts like on arm day, and yeah, those were just fun. They were like I guess like wrist curls and things,
Right.
and then just everything else was like kind of standard, like squats, you know, bench, deadlift. So it was.
What was that like? Was it intense?
I guess in the beginning it was intense. Just you know, your body's like just adapting to everything you're throwing at it, right? Especially starting at 115, 120 pounds, doing deadlifts and then just like being consistent with any sort of workout will kind of beat you up. So at some point, I remember one of these days, there was we did like a leg day with one of my other friends, and then we proceeded to do like a 3 or 4 mile run with like intervals. And I distinctly remember I literally could not walk for a week. Like my quads were so ripped up that I was like leaning against everything wherever I was, because I was like, oh God, I can't walk. And it was just so funny. And like, I remember my dad looked at me, he was like, dude, whatever you did, like, don't ever do that again.
Felt like Jello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like Jello. It's like, whatever you did, like, don't ever do that again. And since that day, I've been doing that ever since, and I'm able to still walk. So the adaptations have been good, I would say.
That's pretty impressive, man. Did your friend keep going?
Oh yeah, now one of them is like, he's a power lifter. He tries to like compete in like any local competitions around the states. My other friend works as a personal trainer, so we all kind of like started in this little cluster, and we've they're blossoming. I don't know if I have, but like, you know, we're trying to make it. That's what it is.
Well, let's get back to you and see if you did blossom, because you said as a kid you were a soccer player, and you were always running around. What position did you play?
I was playing forward and left midfield because I'm a lefty, so they want me on the left side.
Okay, so did you play like during high school?
I played for 1 year in high school, and I think you've probably maybe noticed this or seen this before. Like, playing in grade school and playing in high school are two completely different animals.
Absolutely.
I can't vouch for what happens in college sports. I also imagine that's different, but like, I played with really weird people who were just not good team players in high school, and it was one of those things where like I wanted to quit like 3 weeks into the sport, and like my parents told me like, hey, listen, just you stick with it. You signed up, just finish the year off or finish the season. And from there, you can do whatever you want, you know, in school. But it was kind of one of those important lessons of like, hey, even if it's bad, to just finish it, just go through with the experiment, you know?
Would you say that's what like drove you away from playing soccer?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, that's that would also be like the thing also with obviously like other things, but yeah, soccer especially, that was a big one. Just like when you play with a bad team or you just have that bad personal experience, it'll they'll do it.
there's a lot of politics in like high school sports too, like who starts, who doesn't start, like what parent like donates like money towards the team, like who's close to the team. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you bring this up, and I've only heard about this the first time from like someone else at the gym who his son plays baseball. It must be something like out here in the suburbs where that's kind of that thing where the politics play in. Because like when I was living in Chicago, like you signed up on the team. If you played for a private school, there was like maybe like maximum 15, 20 people, and like you got to play. It's not like your parents like put in some sort of influence to make sure you were a forward or some sort of recruiter came in. Like it's weird how I see that difference. And I understand that out here would be crazy. Like if you weren't born in this particular like, I don't know, if you weren't born in Crystal Lake, like, I don't want to see you on my team kind of thing, you know?
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's how it is, though. It's insane. Like, I don't understand it either. But now that you're grown, you kind of understand it, you know. So did you, like, continue running, like, during high school, like, just for fun?
Not really. I was like full blown into like playing in a band, playing in music. Like we would, you know, show up to like people's basements and play like heavy metal music. It was so fun.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was kind of our shtick for like years. And then, with that kind of going on, and then I eventually got to a point where I got hired as a music teacher. So I was like teaching guitar, voice, piano. That was like my thing for a little while. It was my gig in college. So, music was like a big deal for me for a long time. And then there was just that shift when I was self-actualizing life of like, hey, am I going to do music for the rest of my life? Am I doing computer science? What's grad school going to look like? All these things kind of came together, and what came out of it was that, hey, this running thing is cool. I want to start, you know, getting fit again. Music started taking kind of like this back burner for me because I was just burnt out for like doing music for 10 years, teaching it, you know.
I mean, it seems like you had a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know, you got the computer science, you got the band that you want to like, I feel like you're a type of person where you want to jump in the deep end and go 100%. Is that correct?
Sure, I guess. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's impossible to get that 100%. Like, do you want to be 80% at like, or you want to be an 80% expert at one thing, or like 60 to 40% at like 10 different things, right? That's, I guess, what you're kind of talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was like 40%, at like being generous. It was 40% good at like 5 or 6 different things, or things I was interested in. Yeah.
So for me, like, it's me and you are completely different. When I was like in high school and growing up, I wasn't a runner. I wasn't good. Then when I got to the military, I learned that you have to run.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I learned I was actually a pretty good runner. You know, my best mile was 4 minutes 19 seconds. I weighed 185. That was and then my best 5 miles, because we did 5 miles in the military instead of like 5Ks or 10Ks. We did 5 miles. My best 5 mile was around like 31 minutes, and I was on 175 or 85 pounds. So, do you like try to keep track of your PRs, your personal record, your personal records?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess first off, you know, thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, and then on the note of like a 419 mile, like fun fact, you would probably be able to get onto DePaul's track and field team with a 419. So you should have done it. It would have been great. But no, in terms of records, yeah, I keep track of like the big ones, and it's funny because like we keep track of the opposite ones, right? Like I've never actually tried to do like a full-blown mile to see how fast I can go. I kind of know like where my 5K was at its best, but like the big times for me are like the half marathon and the marathon. And I understand that that's kind of maybe this is kind of where it's contentious as a runner. Like that could be working backwards in terms of trying to get faster for a marathon, because you want to get the basics down first before you start pushing into like 26.2 mile range. So
what drew you to your first marathon?
What was that?
What drew you to? To your first marathon? Like what like had your mindset said I'm gonna run a marathon? Because that's like a tough assignment, you know.
I mean, it doesn't seem tough, your first one ever, but I mean, after that, it kind of, you think about it more. But what got me to the first marathon, I guess there's a couple of things. One, I know my dad, like, always volunteered for the Chicago Marathon for, like, as long as I remember, since 2009, right? So he was always at mile 25. So the idea of the marathon was, like, always, I guess, ingrained in my family, but they never, like, ran it. I was, like, the only serious runner in my family. So what happened there was that's always ingrained. And then in 2015, 2016, you know, you talk to your friends, you kind of continue running, and you're like, hey, this running thing's kind of cool. I can do a 5K. I can do a half marathon. What happens if we do the marathon? And, like, I was young. I was, like, naive. So I'm like, I can totally just wake up one day and just do one. And that's kind of what happened. And I got to remember the name of the trail, but it's in Niles, Illinois. You go up to the Botanic Gardens. It's like 13 miles up, 13 miles down. So I said, okay, I've biked on this many times. What if I just run the entire thing and just, we call it a marathon? And I remember just one day after work, you know, I had Jimmy John's, like, for lunch, and then I put on my running shoes and I went ahead and attempted it. And it was like a really rainy, grueling, like, foggy day, and my parents were freaking out about it too. They, like, came out halfway and they're like, okay, like, we'll come out and, like, support you while we're on bikes and stuff, and you can just, like, finish this thing because this is crazy what you're attempting. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, this is fun. This is great. So there was, like, a mindset difference there of, like, one half of the house is, like, freaking out, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm just kind of having a good time. And, like, I remember it took me, like, 5 hours to finish the marathon, but that didn't really matter to me. What mattered was just getting it done. And from there, that kind of, like, planted the seeds of, like, hey, let's, like, do actual marathons and, like, actually train for this and see what can happen, you know?
Yeah, man. I just miss running. So, like, when you talking about it, I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because, like, when I was pissed off, I would just sprint as fast as I can. I would just go outside. And that sounds like a childish thing to do, but, like, you need to do something when you're, like, pissed. Like, so I would either go to the gym or I would sprint as fast as I can for, like, a fucking mile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I'm in my thoughts right now, which I shouldn't be, but yeah, that's cool, man. So when did you run your first marathon?
It was probably sometime after the Chicago Marathon in 2015 or 14. I think it was 15. And it was just like, I volunteered to just, you know, hand out water during the marathon. And I was like, okay, cool. I could totally do this. Cause, you know, you get inspired. You see people run. I think they call it the running bug, where, like, if you see somebody run, you're just like, I'm going to start doing that now. Or you're the opposite and you're like, oh my God, that person's crazy. Like, it's one or the other. But I saw people run the Chicago Marathon. I'm like, I can do that. And I just did it, like, probably exactly, what is it now? 2024, maybe like exactly 8-9 years ago now. So around this time was when I did it.
That's when my accident occurred. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So it's wild because it wasn't, like, official. I just went out and did it. It's like the Forrest Gump response, right? Like, I just felt like running.
You just did it. What's considered a good time for a marathon?
Yeah, that's also, like, tricky to answer. I know the average, I think, is about either 4.5 or 5.5 hours. So I think anything above one of those two times is considered good. I've always held it to myself that running under 3 hours is, like, that's the bar, you know, because if you can run under 3 hours currently, you would qualify to run the Boston Marathon, which is, I think, held under high prestige as, like, the marathon to run. Yeah,
it's the hardest one, right?
It's the hardest one. It's just also, like, you have to qualify for that. You can't just, I mean, you can sign up as a charity runner, but you can't just, like, sign up for it and just expect them to be like, you're in, you know? Like, Chicago, you can do that. I think with New York, you might be able to. London, Tokyo, like, the marathon majors, this is the ones I'm talking about. Like, those, I think you could just sign up and do. But, like, Boston, they want you to, like, they want you to know that you're, like, they want to know that you're the best of the best before they, like, let you kind of race.
So when I used to run, I used to, like, you know, like, get in the zone, you know, and, like, when I ran, like, after, like, 4 miles, like, it literally felt like I was walking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it feels normal to walk when you're running. It feels like normal. Did you ever get, like, tired, or were you ever just like, you know, this is easy? Or could you go for, like, what's the longest you've ever gone? Have you gone past a marathon?
Yeah, I have on accident. I think I did about 27, maybe 28 miles at some point. But yeah, what you're talking about, I guess, is like the idea of the runner's high to an
Yeah.
extent. That's just like, yeah, when your body's just kind of in that motion, you've gone past, 20, 25 minutes of running, and now it's just like, I don't know, you're in your head now, and you're just like in the zone. And then like the cannabinoids of your within your body are now like kind of in full force, so you just feel like you're floating and you're going. I've hit that point many times. I think the craziest times when you hit that is like when you're in the middle of marathon training. So when you do 20 miles, like you think about that 20-mile run and you think, oh my God, this is gonna be grueling, right? I can think of 3 different occasions when I would do that 20-mile run in the marathon training block where I would hit like mile 15, mile 16, and I would just start laughing uncontrollably in the middle of the run. And I was like, okay, I hit the runner's high. Like my brain is like in the zone. And like you can't control the emotions. You're like laughing one moment and then you're ready to start crying the next, and you're like, what is going
You're
on
not
here?
like slowing down either. Like you're staying at the same pace. It's insane. It's like it's so hard to explain to people who don't do it. But when you get there and you understand what we're talking about, like people out there, like they'll be like, oh wow, this is amazing. The feeling.
Yeah, and that's one of the draws, I think, to like long distance running, and probably even like 5K, 10K running, is like that feeling of, your body just you're out of your head, but you're kind of also in it, and you're just like zoned in, tunnel vision on some kind of goal that you might be trying to get.
Right. So when you're running, I mean, obviously there's a grueling phase. Like there's for some people, like I hit it around like 5 miles, but when I pass the 5 mile range, then I start getting that runner's high, like you said. Like, but sometimes around the 5 mile round, I'm like, okay, I need to slow down a little bit. But when do you think you hit the grueling phase?
Like probably in the daily run or your average run, I think about the same, right? So like you hit 5 miles and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I hit 5 miles, and then you get to like the 10K point of like 6.2 miles, 7, 8. It starts getting like a little more grueling depending on, your fitness at the time. But yeah, like if my average run is about 6 to 7 miles a day, or 40, 50 miles a week, that's probably where I expect to kind of hit that wall at like typical baseline fitness. Not like if I'm in a marathon training block, but just like day to day, right?
Right. How many marathons have you ran?
I think I've done 8 official marathons, or it's 8 total. I'll have to double check that. But they were all Chicago marathons minus 2020 and 2023 since 2016.
What do you plan on going throughout the country? Because I had a teacher, Miss Petrie. Shout out Miss Petrie. I can't believe I remembered her name. Dude, she was a keyboard teacher because they were teaching us how to type, and she had all of her things in the class, and she did every marathon in the country.
Isn't that crazy that you like remember the teachers that ran like big races and stuff? I have a teacher like that, Earl Dannon. We're gonna shout you out.
Let's go.
Yeah, in his accounting class when I was in high school, he had like all of his bibs like on the walls of the classroom,
Yeah.
and you're like, man, this guy like runs a lot and stuff, and like, it's only then do you realize how cool like running is when like you see your teachers in high school kind of do it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm that guy. That's me now. And it's like, it's kind of fun, but in terms of like running across the country, so I've done like a few runs across the country. I've been trying to get into, across the globe as well. I'm trying to do all the marathon majors right now, and they just introduced a new one. So the marathon majors are Chicago, Tokyo, London, Boston, and New York, and Berlin. And now they've added Sydney, Australia to the list. So I've got 6 more marathons to go to get the World Marathon Majors like full completion. So I've got a big itinerary to go. And most people try in their lifetime to run all 6. You don't have to run them well, or all 7 in this case, but like you don't have to run them well. You just want to get them done,
When are you going to run the next one?
Good question. I am officially confirmed for next Chicago just because I have like a legacy feature for that. I did sign up for Berlin. In 2019, I was accepted for Tokyo, and just because, the world kind of changed in 2020. I kept pushing that registration back, and I kind of lost it. So I have to start registering for them sooner than later, you know.
I wonder what the difference is, like the scenery, you know, like you run Berlin, so much history in Berlin.
Yeah.
And Tokyo, you run the Tokyo marathon, and then like, I wonder why they're called the major like cities for the marathon, you know.
I think that's just the organization. That's what Abbott, I guess they run this thing. They just consider it like the big six of like, I don't know. Maybe it is because they're just big cities and that's just what they want to do. But
Yeah, it says Abbott, World Marathon Majors. Looking right now, it says find authentic World Marathon Majors apparel. I'm fucking wow! Just shout it out, Abbott. Marathon Majors. Do you follow them, Abbott?
I mean, I think I have them on Instagram, but yeah, if Abbott, you're listening, can you guys get me registered for all of them next year? I'll run all 7 next year.
I mean, what are your times?
Well, right now my fitness is not great. I just ran Chicago in 3:32. My fastest marathon ever is about 3 hours 10 minutes. And some seconds, so we got to get that to below 3 hours.
What was the fastest? Remember that guy? He broke the record with the shoes, Nike shoes.
There's 2, I guess, prominent records in marathon running. There's Eliud Kipchoge when he ran the sub 2 hour in like, it was like an unsanctioned race, but they just like closed off all the roads and they like did that record in I think 2021 or 2019. One of those 2 years. And then
last year it was broken. It says Calvin Kipton from the Chicago Marathon broke the record for the fastest marathon.
Yeah, that's the fastest official one. Yeah. So rest in peace, Calvin Kipton. He died. Yeah, he was in a car accident this year.
Jesus.
Yeah, him and his coach. It was crazy. Like he just ran the marathon and then like 3-4 months later he passed away in Kenya. But no, yeah, he has the official fastest marathon. I think it was 2 hours and 35 seconds. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. 2 hours and 35 seconds. You know your shit.
Yeah.
That's
it's crazy.
Fast.
Like, it's crazy in Chicago, too.
Fast, dude. Holy shit. And he was wearing the new Nike shoes. I'm pretty sure he was wearing. Let's talk about that. So in 2015, like, I was wearing, like, regular Asics. I went to the store. I got some Asics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's and other shoes. I know there were some shoes, but in the military, they're like, hey, go get some running shoes. Okay, got the running shoes. I'm a sneakerhead. Okay, and I watch like Seth Fowler and Kais and all these other people, and they review shoes, right? And they're telling me like how soft it is, like the Ultra Boost when there was the Ultra Boost phase, and then the Yeezy phase, and now New Balance is huge with the softness, and I like how it's walking on like cushions and stuff. What would you say like the evolution of like the shoe like for running? Like, do you think it helps runners, or do you think it's just a facade?
It's definitely got its pros and cons. So like most of the technology now, like kind of what you described, it's like there's cushions, and like Hoka was big on this with like making a shoe that made you feel like you were running on clouds, right? Like Asics has this thing with like the Nova Blast, like where it's running on like marshmallows and things like that. So having the higher stack on the foam helps with road running because it just reduces the impact on your knees, hips, on your back. So that's the theory behind it. So we'll see in the next 10 years how that kind of goes. But what changed racing overall was when they started putting carbon plates in between like foam stacks and shoes. So you'll have a much stiffer shoe, but it feels like a spring when you bounce off the ground. So
yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, so that's kind of where some of the technology is. I know Adidas, they were experimenting more with like a claw kind of shape with like carbon rods going through a shoe. So the big thing now is like putting this stiff carbon plate or nylon, whatever material it is, between foam stacks so you run faster. In terms of pros and cons, like, yeah, pros are like if you have the right biomechanics, I think you'll benefit from those shoes. But if you don't, you might risk more injury because they're just so stiff. So like if we want to get real technical about like sneaker stuff, like everybody has like a way where they like stand and they walk where a certain offset in the shoe, so their stack height, is paramount to their running form. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's like,
no, it does, because everybody has different feet.
yeah, so like you might over pronate, you might over supinate. So the difference is like pronation's like your arches sink in, supination is when they sink, or when they when you're like leaning more on your like pinky toes. So if you pronate too much, you need like a higher stack height to overcome that. So if you have a shoe like the Nike Alpha Fly 1, okay, they have like a stack height that's more neutral, but if you over pronate, it might not like feel good for you in the shoe, so you might need something more like the Vaporfly, which is like 8 millimeters, 10 millimeters, kind of going up to overcome that arch difference. So it's like, these are like minuscule details. A lot of people kind of just overlook those, but as somebody who like reviews running shoes fairly regularly, like these are things I think about when it comes to what we talked about earlier, like the basics, like what kind of shoe is good for me on a day-to-day basis that would prevent injury and like be good for my running form.
Right. To all the like young runners out there, not the young, the beginners, you know, people who are like trying to get into running, what do you recommend they do? Like when it comes to like getting the perfect shoe or getting the shoe that's most ideal for them?
Yeah, well, I guess for like absolute beginners, as somebody who reviews shoes, don't listen to me. I would go to like a running store, you know, get fitted by like professionals, let them look at your running form. I would hope, fingers crossed, that like the place you go to, they know what they're talking about. They could put you in a shoe that's like good for your form. And as somebody who was like injured with like shin splints, you probably remember the days of shin splints, right? So I was like running in shoes that made no sense to me. And then I went to this running store, I think in Arlington Heights, just like, you know, a few miles east of here. And basically they put me in, I think it was the Brooks Adrenaline 16. And like since then I've never had shin splints, and like it was a shoe that I put like over 600 miles in, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like I never thought there would be a shoe that would like not make me feel injured all the time. And then since then I paid attention to those things. Like what did the Brooks Adrenaline do that shoes now that I'm wearing can do? So
I'm just thinking like how lucky we are compared to like people in the 1980s and the 1990s, like wearing different shoes, you know, compared to like what we're like, you're talking about the arch and this and that, and like Nike's coming up with this technology just so you can run good, you don't get shin splints. Like you know, shout out to all those people that ran marathons back then. Like that's some respect, honestly. Put some respect on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they would like run barefoot basically.
I
Sometimes.
was just about to ask you, would you ever run a barefoot?
On the roads, probably not, unless it was like for some kind of cause, which I've seen people do. But like when I was spending some considerable time in Florida, you would just run barefoot on the beach. Like it was good for you. And I guess you can correct me. Maybe you can keep me honest about this, but I know like some people in the military, especially in the army, they would like run in the sand like barefoot.
Yeah, it depends. Like if you're stationed in like Hawaii or something, you know. But yeah,
it's more intense, and I think it's better for your feet because you're building those like micro arch muscles in your feet, working on like those micro tendons in your ankles. So running on sand, it has its pros and cons, I would say.
well, and like when you run on the street, you build callus, you know, which is good. Like a lot of people don't like if they don't run on the street, even with shoes, you know, you build callus, and that's what you need rather than running on a treadmill or a treadmill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, I mean, treadmill workout, it has its place, but like for the most part, like if you can spend time outside, just enjoying yourself, I think that's like, I don't know, somebody's going to yell at me like it's better than running on a treadmill. But again, they all have their place in a training program. You just you do everything in moderation. You shouldn't just like entirely train on a treadmill for a marathon, and you shouldn't like entirely expect to be injury free running outside.
Right.
That's my thoughts.
Okay, so we let's go back to like, you know, like marathon talking, like not you in particular, because I guess you Forrest Gumped it, but what, like, can you like walk me through like what people have to do to train for a marathon?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the science revolving around the marathon is a little bit more, it's more defined now than it was like, 20, 30 years ago. Like
Right.
people understand that there's like, okay, you build 3 weeks, you take a week easy, 3 weeks, and you like keep stacking it. And eventually you get to a point like 2 or 3 weeks before your marathon, you run like 20 or 20 or 22 miles. And then you do like what's called the taper, right? Where you like ease off the miles, you take it easy, you start eating more, you rest more. And then the day of the race, bam, you should be theoretically ready. So I think in terms of marathon training, like those plans exist, and I think they're fairly accurate in terms of getting you to the goals you might be looking for and keeping you, for the most part, injury-free during a marathon.
Where did you learn that?
So, I mean, there's like research from, anything online. I know the Hanson running program, they like wrote books about this, and they've kind of like laid this out. Not as finite as like kind of the way I explained it. That's like the summary of it. But they like knew these certain things that would just exist in a training block where like some days you're just pushing really hard, you're doing speed work. And then I guess the other thing to mention here is that like on a week-to-week basis, 80% of your running was like super easy. And then 20% of it was like that speed work that was a little bit harder, your sprints and all that. So they ran on the theory that if you just spent a lot of time running, just time on feet, that would get you to the marathon better than like you just going full blast every single day like a maniac,
Well, yeah, there's that saying. I can't think of it right now. You can't. I can't think of the saying where it takes. You can't. It's like it's a run. Like you have to like run before you sprint or something like that, or like you're training for a marathon. Something I fucking boasted at.
I'm thinking of like maybe a variation of that. It's like you're not gonna like win a marathon like in the first mile kind of thing. Like this is a long-term kind of process.
Right.
Yeah, it almost becomes your side job kind of.
What about the night before? What do you have to do? Do you have to eat differently?
Sure. I mean, if the night before a marathon, I guess it's like you could eat differently, but the rule, this is one of like those weird things I've heard is like, oh yeah, the night before you carb up, right? That's the one where like you eat 20 pounds of spaghetti or something like that. But what I've learned over time is like, you don't do that the night before, you do that like the entire week before, because you got to like teach your body to like hold more calories down, because when you're running the marathon, you're cooking calories,
Dude, I would think the opposite. That's crazy. So you have to like carb up, eat a bunch of carbs.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to get some carbs. You need some like quick fuels in you. If you've been like training like that, like I would definitely not do something that's different the night before your marathon that you didn't do during your training program. Like you don't buy brand new pairs of shoes like the night before the marathon and you're like, I'm racing in those. Like that's crazy. Don't do that. Like you got to break in the shoes. You got to like break in the socks. Like everything matters at that point.
What about the morning? Do you eat anything?
No, I like to go empty stomach. I'll have like maybe a little bit of coffee, maybe a little bit of pre if I need to, but yeah, nothing crazy. You don't want like anything to upset your stomach.
What do you eat for training?
It depends. I guess like the rule I've followed with training is like whatever I eat 48 hours before is like kind of what will fuel me for the run that's kind of coming ahead. And I'm sure that's like contentious and some people will disagree, but like if I know Monday night that on Wednesday I have to do a speed workout, I'll eat like more carbs. I'll eat like spaghetti, maybe like chicken parmesan or something like that, something yummy, I would say. And then by the time Wednesday rolls around, hopefully whatever I was carb loading on would be used as my fuel source then. And then if I'm running something slower or like I know it's going to be an easy day, you'd eat something a little bit more dense, maybe not as carb intensive, maybe like a steak, some eggs, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, I don't think it truly matters what you eat. I think as long as you're fueling, I think that's like priority number one, because you know that like if you don't eat or you don't rest well, you're just going to have a terrible time running overall.
How many calories do you have to eat like while you're training to not lose weight doing all this cardio?
Yeah, I guess that also depends too on like your mileage per week. The rule I think people have followed is that it's a contentious number too, but it's like 100 calories per mile. But that varies for everyone, right? Like, is that the rule for somebody like me who weighs 140 pounds? Is that like the same rule for somebody who weighs 300 pounds, right? So if you use like 100 as a baseline and you know like, okay, fine, I've got maintenance calories during the day, you know, I'm thinking real hard in front of the computer, I got to walk around, I got to like do all these things, and you're doing this for like an 8-mile run, then you would probably assume maybe at some point during the day you're going to eat like an 800 calorie meal plus minus, just to kind of give you maybe some like reserve calories for repair and things like that.
There's a lot of mechanics to it. So I wonder what the marathon runner we were just talking about, Kelvin
Kiptum, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what he did. I really do.
Yeah, I know Kenyan diet. If they're training in Kenya, I got to remember the name of the food. Oh my gosh, you guys could look this up too. I think it's called ugali or ungali. It's like a carb-dense like dough, and like they eat this thing, and it's like their main fuel source. I wish
You're
I
right. Kenyan ugali, it's right there.
yeah, that thing right there. That is like their power fuel right there. And to us, it looks like dough. It looks like a ball of rice, and like that's what they like eat to fuel for a marathon or like any sort of workout. And it's like it's crazy. That's like kind of like the primary one, and obviously they got like veggies and like fruits and things like that. But that's like the main one I've heard.
Have you ever tried it?
I have not. I want to though. I know there's like some really cool Kenyan restaurants like in Chicago. So if I go down there, I might like.
I mean, like, look at it. You can see like the nutrition facts or the calories. 178, 1.8.
It's 38 carbs for 170 calories.
Yeah, that's a carb bomb. That's like a good one. And then like calorie count is like not too high. Good sodium too, just to keep everything there. A good protein, good sugars. Yeah.
So fuck chicken parm. You get that ugali. That's what you need.
Why not both?
I mean, why not both?
Yeah. No.
I like that, man. You're a really positive dude, Philip. You really are. And on the show where we tell people to share their stories, and obviously your story's not done. You're a young kid just like me, and I hope you do all those major cities for sure. You know, I like. You said the one you want to do most is Tokyo, right?
Yeah, Tokyo's the big one. Everyone wants me to do Tokyo because they want to go with me to Tokyo. So I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. That's like the that's the bit, right? So it's fine.
So my question is, have you ever hit, like, rock bottom in your life?
Oh, totally, all the time. Like happens on a daily basis. It's just like you try not to like dwell in those moments, you know.
Right.
It's just like I don't want to be like defined by my negative moments in life, and like it's weird that some people like embrace that. They'll be like, "Oh yeah," I don't even want to like think of the examples or like put anyone on blast, but like I just don't like the idea that like some people just enjoy like dwelling in misery, I guess. And maybe this is just a runner's thing, or like just the fact that like we go to the gym and like we take care of our bodies, that like that's not something we think about of like, oh man, like work is so hard. Oh man, I was like a former alcoholic, or like I like had some kind of like big issue in my life. I don't know. It's hard to explain because I can't.
Like, have you like, is there like negativity, like negative people like around you in your life?
I'm sure there are. It's just like I don't dwell on that, I guess. Like have people like told me weird stuff, or like you know, they tell me like their depressing stories in their life. I'm sure, yeah. And it's like I can't really relate with a lot of those negative stories, I guess. Like, I think about those things. Like, I won't put anyone, again, on blast, but, like, people will tell me, like, you know, their parents passing away, or they're on some kind of, like, antidepressants because that's just, like, what's going on in their life. And, like, I don't know. I just can't relate to, like, those, I guess, moments in life yet. But I don't know.
It's all those endorphins, probably.
I don't know. It's just, again, like the whole positivity thing, like I don't like try to like pretend like I'm the most positive person in the world. Like your perception of me is that like I'm positive, and like, yeah, I hope that's the case. Like I don't dwell on the negative stuff too much. And if I do, I use that as like fuel to get better, you know? Like if something's not going well at work, you know, that's like, I'll think about it. I'll take that problem with me on a run, and we'll work it out, you know?
Do you think I'm positive?
I mean, from the time that we've sat here and we've talked, I'd say like you strike me as positive. I know you've definitely had like a positive kind of, I don't know if upbringing is probably the way I would say it, but like your experience probably in the military with running, like I would imagine it was like mostly good, or you've had like a good learning experience somewhere?
I really wish I was able to get into like the mechanics like you did, but like the military, it's just run. Just run. Like they don't care what you eat. They tell you to put salt on your food. That's it. Like because the I guess like sodium helps like you not pass out, like electrolytes.
Yeah, it prevents the cramping.
Prevents the cramping. Yeah, so they tell you to put salt in the food, but I don't know the scientific mechanics of running, and I wish I was able to do that. But yeah, no, I'm for the most part pretty positive. That's why I started the show. Basically share your story and. What are some of the little things you think in life that you have that could be taken away from you, like at any point? Like, what are some of the little things that you kind of forget about that you appreciate?
Oh, like the little things? Well, I mean, obviously, like just being able to like wake up and just like do this, whatever this is, just like on a daily basis is always fun. You know, just being able to have the idea of like, hey, look, I've got this job that like I enjoy. I've got this thing like I can talk to cool people. I've got running, you know.
What's your job?
So I work as a cybersecurity analyst for a major airline. I don't know if they want me to like shout them out or not, but you know, it's the airline, so it's fun.
What is that like? Like, is that like for like terrorist attacks or anything?
No. It's like just a domestic commercial airline here in the States. One of the big four. So if I was to say Delta, American Airlines, United, and Southwest, it's one of those four. We'll put it that way.
Don't dox yourself, Phillip.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably already like looking at my last name. They know everything about me already. But yeah, so from a cybersecurity perspective, the airlines are really cool. So just
Do you have to like go into work or do you work from home?
So yeah, we're officially 100% remote as of like a few months ago, but I was technically considered hybrid, but it's impossible because like everyone is just all over the globe on my team now, right? Like we started when I started, it was like very early 2020, and then like the first 6 weeks of my job, I got to go into the office, and then once the pandemic started, we were like remote indefinitely.
I was just about to bring that up. What were airlines like when the pandemic was going on? Because I know that the freaking tickets were cheap as fuck.
Mm-hmm. So it was definitely pandemonium because like they basically shut down flying internationally, but domestic wasn't so bad. So if you were like a primarily domestic airline, you might have been okay, but like people still, stayed home. They didn't fly or anything like that. So for us, I think I got lucky under a lot of circumstances. So when I started on the cybersecurity team, I was just a contractor. They had the option to like let me go in 2020. And I don't know if somebody was just watching out for me at the company, but they kept me on. A lot of people left. A lot of people got let go. Because the team I worked on was like operation critical, they kept me. So I've been on that team ever since, but I was brought on as a full-time employee in Christmas of, I think, 2021, and I've been a full-time employee since. So
Was it pretty hard during the pandemic for you?
I would say so, especially if you've like never worked in the field. You're just kind of like learning everything remotely. You can't like physically sit down with somebody and they like show you how to use a tool or how to do like some sort of analysis, right? Like you're learning a lot of this stuff either from what you learned in school, what you learned from the first 6 weeks that you were there. So you kind of learn a lot of it on your own. And then it obviously becomes tricky from a morale standpoint because you could get siloed out from like, you're sitting in front of your computer all day long by yourself in some cases. So that definitely could take a mental toll on some people. And that's where when I hear companies talk about having that hybrid model and people like lose their minds over it, like I don't hate the idea, but like I would only do it if you want to be that kind of hybrid employee. So it depends. Like if you have a family at home.
Sounds like you're flexible.
Yeah. And it's like for me, it's cool because like I guess sure I don't have like kids or like a wife or anything like that, so I can go to a different country if I wanted to and work.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do like embrace that idea, and I think if you have good managers who are like, hey, listen, you can work from wherever you want, you can work whenever you want, just get the work done. I think that's like positive for a 100% remote work kind of deal. So
Speaking of the pandemic, how did your training change?
Yeah.
Like your marathon training
Yeah.
change during the pandemic?
So obviously when you don't have like a race goal within like the immediate future, that kind of puts certain things on hold. For me personally, I thought, so this was happening like in 2019 towards the end of the year, I was like dead set that I was going to run Tokyo Marathon. So I was running like 90 miles a week. I was like burnt out. I was like ready just to like stop all the running altogether. And then I guess they announced first, I guess like the virus was spreading in like China, and then like parts of Japan got hit, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not. It's not going to happen for sure,
Yeah.
right? And then they announced that like just the elites would run. And long story short, like knowing that all the races were put on hold, I just wanted to keep like a good baseline. So I kept running every single day, but it was like anywhere from like 5 to 7 miles a day, maybe less. But I also had like a stationary bike trainer at home, so I just figured like, yeah, okay, like just keep everything consistent, because eventually this is all going to be like put aside and like racing is gonna resume. So like when that light hits, like are you gonna be ready? You know, when the gun goes off for that thing.
Yeah.
So fast forward like, you know, that whole year later, it's 2021. I spent like a month in Florida, and like Florida's been completely open. They're like racing just regularly. They have like 5Ks, 10Ks. I don't know if they have like marathons or anything, but I remember I signed up for like a 4-mile race out there, and I ended up winning the race because like, I don't know, my fitness was in a good spot. It is kind of Florida, so you are racing maybe some older people, but despite all of that, like old people are very fast at running. Like I will never look at some old guy and go like, oh yeah, this guy, it's gonna be just a piece of cake. Like no, they are so fast.
Yeah.
But it was just a unique scenario where like, yeah, some kid from Chicago goes to Florida and is able to like run. So the difference there is like you just don't have like a race goal. You just have to have that goal on your own, I think. Like you have to have that mental fortitude of like, okay, 3 months from now I want to run a certain time, and can you get that goal done, right? Because a lot of people are driven by race goals, and if they don't have like a goal, they won't run, you know?
I mean, what happens when you achieve that goal? Are you like just happy as hell, or like what is that feeling?
That's a weird one too. I guess
Because I mean, it is just running, but
Mhm.
running is like a huge thing, you know?
I mean, like if I achieve the goal, it's like it doesn't stop, right? Like for me, it's like, what's the next like bar we're
That's
gonna
what I
break,
was thinking.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost as if like when you get to the marathon and you know you're gonna do well, it's like less about the destination and more about the journey. I know that sounds generic, but like I think a lot of people like doing marathon training more than they do like the actual race.
Wow.
I think, and that's a hot take. I know I'm one of those people that like, if I trained for 8 months and then like the day before the marathon, somebody said, hey, listen, you don't have to run this thing. I'd be like, yeah, you're right. But I want to, because like I put in the work, so we're gonna. I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, the marathon, no. It's hard to explain. Like some people just like the process more than the main event.
Do you think it's your mind like being competitive with you? Like saying like you're gonna do this, like you need to run this marathon, and then when you run it, then you're like, okay, next, what's next?
Yeah, that's definitely it. And then like the voice is always fighting in your head of like, hey, if you don't do this thing, like you're really bad, or I don't know, wherever your mind can go into dark places. But yeah, I mean, like if I know I'm gonna achieve the goal, I'll be like, all right, cool. We'll give a fun example. So like if I could run the 5K in like 18 minutes, which was like fairly fast for me at the time. I was like, okay, cool. Can we get that down to 16:30 now? Like, what do I do to start pushing those smaller and smaller margins? Because there will be eventually like a cap, but I want to find it, you know? Because I think a lot of people, I think they take for granted what like the human body or their own body is totally capable of. So like it's one of those things that drives you every day too. Like, yeah, you like get out of bed and you're like, all right, if I don't like, you have so many finite days that you can do things, and you have so many like finite heartbeats in your body. Like, why would you like waste any of that time not trying to get somewhere in your life for like whatever goal you may have? It's cliche, I know.
No,
It's-
that's
yeah.
inspiring as hell,
Yeah.
dude. Because your heart is beating. It's like put that stuff to work. You know, give your heart a reason of why it's beating, and that's why people run. That's why you run. I mean, there's a group of people, but you could say it's a cult. Like who knows? Like you probably like join Facebook groups or something, and like social media probably has helped a lot with like running, because you said even on TikTok someone could say, hey, I'm gonna run in New York, who wants to run with me, and then 2,000 people show up. That's
yeah, that's like the weird recent trend that like influencers do. I'm sure there's a video out there. It's like influencers like turn running clubs into like dating events, which is like weird. I guess it's if it works, it works. But like, I was watching a video somewhere where like this influencer was like, hey, I'm gonna go run on the lakefront path in Chicago. Who's coming out? And like 2,000 people came out, like what you said, right? And it's like crazy to think that that's like happening, but I don't like what that would do to like the overall like run club scene, where there's people like who genuinely want to run, and then there's also people who like are the influencers who just want to run to like meet people for dates. It's like kind of weird, I suppose. But if it brings people out to run, cool. But is that model sustainable versus like the run club of people who are like, hey, we're here every Thursday, we run this distance, bam,
There's probably like some sort of attraction though towards people when they are running. I would assume. I mean, I don't know. I've never been in one of these groups. I mean, I wish I was able to, but I follow this guy, Brett Conti. Do you know who he is? He's from New York, and he always goes to these running groups, and he puts it on YouTube. And yeah, shout out Brett. He's a really cool dude.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of them for sure. It's hard to keep up with a lot of them, but yeah, no, I just don't know in terms of like for running clubs in particular, if there's like a pull for some people, or it's just like a good social event. I think it'd be probably the latter.
So you brought up like heartbeats and stuff, and I see what you're wearing on your arm is that watch, that Apple Watch. Everybody has an Apple Watch nowadays. I didn't get to use an Apple Watch, so I don't know like what it brings, like what like the stats, the statistics bring for an Apple Watch. Can you explain like the evolution of Apple Watch for running compared to back then?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously not cool enough for a Garmin yet, but I mean, that's like the big fight in the running world is like, do you have an Apple Watch or do you have a Garmin? And like, apparently you're more cool than, everyone else if you have one or the other. But okay, besides that point, the metrics, I guess, with the Apple Watches, it's just helpful in the long term. So if you're just tracking your heart rate or you're tracking your VO2 max, like allegedly the statistics that like the Apple Watch holds kind of gives you those metrics in real time. So I don't know if I necessarily trust all like the VO2 max stuff, but that's like the number that kind of like, it's kind of like in layman's terms, it's like your bar of fitness for cardio or endurance kind of sport. And I've always aimed for like a number above 62, like VO2 max. And sometimes it like varies because like on the Apple Watch, it'll tell you like...
What is VO2?
Oh man, I can't even explain it like scientifically right now. But it's basically... I'm sure we can look this up, and I'm gonna like botch the wording for it. It's like
let's look it up.
It's I'm gonna see if I can summarize it before we find it. It's like your blood and oxygen, or it's your oxygen per blood liter, maybe. I hope we can find it there.
Measures how much oxygen your body can use during exercise.
Yeah, there we go.
So it's like aerobic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I would say. So it's like the idea of like, you can take a deep breath. How far is that deep breath going to take you? I guess that's a good way to put it. Because a lot of people, when they run, they're like panting, right? So like maybe the VO2 max is a little bit lower, or they're sick or something like that. But like some people will run and they can take like 3 steps inhale, 3 steps exhale. So like, yeah, I guess that's like the principle. Saying. Yeah, so it's the how much oxygen do you need to do the thing? So there's like a whole equation to it, and I guess somewhere down the line scientists or like running physiologists have decided that any number above like 60 or 62 is like intensely good, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's try to get above 62 VO2 max.
Is it kind of like a resting heart rate a little bit? Because my resting heart rate even right now is like 62.
I guess like resting heart rate will play into it. I think that's more of like it's probably a good indicator if you didn't have like a VO2 max number. So like, I think you've probably heard this before that like people who train or like do cardio frequently, they'll have a resting heart rate between like 40 and 60.
Yeah.
So if you like know what it is when you sleep or like you're sitting in a chair, that's a good metric to work off of. And then if it's like anywhere from like 60 to 80, like, hey, there's a couple of things there. Maybe you're not active. Maybe there's like a health condition to consider, you know? So that's like the metric I also use. And I like to play the game of like how low I can get my heart rate to go when I go to sleep. And then like in the middle of the night, like my watch will freak out. It'll be like, hey, you got your heart rate to 38 for like 10 minutes.
How do you change that? Like, how do you affect that?
So I think, obviously it's like the level and the amount of cardio you do will impact that, but it's also, how much recovery is also involved in the process. So for example, like if you had a really intense workout the day before and like your cortisol levels are high, like you're not going to have necessarily a low heart rate, that night. You might have like, I don't know, if your regular resting heart rate's like 40, you might be sleeping and it's now like 45 or 47. So it's like the body just needs more beats per minute to kind of heal the body, push nutrients, push oxygen. Like I have like really dumb ways of like kind of summarizing this, but that's one of those things. I know if you do like easy cardio, but you do it for a long time, and you're not like really causing a massive cortisol spike in your body, I think that can help lower the heart rate. So in my personal examples, like, yeah, I can have like a regular run, keep it consistent. But if I do like a bike workout, something that's like less impact, something that's a little bit easier on the heart, that's lower, I'll go to bed that night and I can get a heart rate of like 39, 38. And it's like just really funny.
Phillip, are you an addict?
Yeah.
No, I just like read a lot of stuff on running and it's just really interesting. But
It is like
yeah.
I'm literally like I'm like dumbfounded. Like it's like what you're talking about is super interesting.
Let's be clear, I'm not like a scientist or a doctor. Don't take my advice.
Entertainment purposes only.
Yes, that's right. This is just like things I read and things I've speculated and conclusions I've come to.
But it's worked for you, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, again, like you ask the questions, like you run, you break a bone, and you're like, okay, what do I do to not do that again? And then you go down the rabbit hole if you're interested in like not breaking your foot again, right? Same thing with like muscles. Like I'm sure like, you know, your brother can tell everyone here, like you're deadlifting and then you like are sore for the next week. Okay, what do we do not to be sore for the next week? Like, do I just keep doing this thing? Do I like train a different muscle group? Like, if you're passionate about it, like you'll read about it, or you'll try to find a way.
Do you think technology has like changed the culture of running, or at least helped?
Yeah, I think overall it's definitely changed it. I know like YouTube is a big one, so like you'll see like running influencers, like running vlogs and things like that. I'm sure that's inspiring for people. In terms of
even like the watch, you know, like how it like you have like a streak with friends and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a thing too, like where Apple will have like the little circles that you have to close, and they're like, wow, you closed the move ring like for the last 7 days, good job. That's a thing too. It'll kind of help pump you and kind of keep you focused for sure, because
like,
you become obsessed with closing the rings. I've been there before, and then like every week Apple will be like, okay, you closed 900 calories per week, let's push it up to 1100 now. And you're like, okay. So it's like Apple's kind of pushing you to like get faster and faster.
That positive reinforcement.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But it also has its kind of setbacks. And I've been thinking about this more. I can't prove any of it right now. Just something to think about, maybe for, you know, yourself, maybe your viewers. You wear the Apple Watch on like one wrist for like a long period of time, and you start running with it. This thing is like, I don't know how much it weighs, like maybe barely an ounce. Like over a long period of time of your arms swinging, how is that affecting your balance and like the size of your shoulders, like left versus right, because of this micro thing you're doing 1,000 to like multiple tens of thousand times a day, you know? That's just something I'm thinking about. It's like, what is this little thing doing to my overall physique? Like, is this impacting my spine in any sort of way? Like, weird like things I think about.
So you are an addict. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Do you wear it when you go on a marathon?
Oh yeah, of course. It always dies before the marathon's over, which upsets me. It just means you got to run faster just so it doesn't die.
All right, man. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you a pretty deep question. What's the biggest goal you've ever achieved? Like literally in your mind, you're like, I can't believe I did this. Whether it's running, whether it's school, what is something that you are so proud of?
This is a deep question. I got to think about this one. I don't know if it's like a running goal necessarily. Maybe more in a work space. Because, like, we got to think of the right way to frame this. It would be like, you know, in the running world, or I would know that the certain goals I set, I will like achieve, and they'll be achieved over time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But I think the goals where you're not sure if the if is a guarantee, I think is the ones that hit you the most. So the one that I can immediately think of was acquiring like a certification in cybersecurity from like a particular organization. And like this certification I got was just like a display to myself that as like a cybersecurity analyst, I didn't have like imposter syndrome in the field. So getting the certification to me was like, okay, like I've done cybersecurity for this many years. Am I actually like decent at this? Do I know what I'm doing like in this place? Am I just like somebody who's just here and like just a drone? But it turns out like, okay, I know what I'm doing in cybersecurity. This certification kind of proves it. And it's the next logical steps after that is like to get those next pieces. So like, I guess to elaborate on that more, like the physical goals, like those I think are a matter of if rather than when, or those are when rather than if, but like goals that require me like sitting in front of a computer or a book to study for a test, like things that I'm not good at, like taking tests, right? Like achieving those in like a work environment, I think end up feeling more impactful.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's you know, it's crazy because you're a runner, and like I feel like everyone who's listening right now would be like, if they finished a marathon, that would be like one of their greatest achievements. But yours is with your studies in school and becoming a person in cybersecurity, and like, you know, kudos to you, man. Like I'm happy that changed your life, and I would say you're living life to the max. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to my parents for, you know, believing that education is priority number one in your life. And, yeah, I've kind of believed that ever since.
Dude, it was very nice having you on the podcast, man. I learned a lot, to be honest with you. I did not, Evie, did you learn a lot? I didn't expect any.
Like I said, I don't run unless I'm being chased. So I
Yeah.
definitely learned a lot today about running.
It's
She's going to start running now.
It's very fast. It's very fascinating with the food and like the calories and just how your body works. And it seems like you got the knowledge now, but you're still going to keep learning and learning and learning. And I hope you get those major cities, man. It was it's cool. If you have anything to say to the people, go ahead. What camera is he?
He is camera 2.
It's camera 2.
Camera
Go ahead,
two.
camera 2. Let's,
Camera 2, yeah.
you can shout out your Instagram and.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a YouTube channel. It's just called Phillip Latocha Running. On that channel, we have some run vlog stuff. We talk about running shoes, just kind of some stuff like that. You can follow me on Instagram, Strava, all sorts of like other social medias. I'm pretty not hard to find. You just need to spell my name right. That's Philip, Phillip, and then last name Latocha.
We will put that in the link in the description below for
Sounds
sure.
good.
And dude, it was great talking to you.
Yeah,
I'm
likewise.
happy you came on. If everybody enjoyed the podcast, we are on YouTube now, okay? I know for everybody listening, we're on YouTube. Life to the Max podcast. Go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, post a notification bell so you know when the next episode goes on. And I'm paralyzed from the neck down, breathing through a machine. But that doesn't stop me from following my dreams and doing what I love to do. I don't got any excuse, and neither should you. We'll see you guys next time.
Don't live it twice. Couple green thumbs, all highs. Weather getting warmer, getting closer to the summer. Damn, I don't wanna grow up. What a bummer. Word. To what? To my mother. We only going up. We ain't never going under. I told the bros I ain't really worried about it.